All right, let's dive into something pretty controversial, shall we? We're talking about President Trump's executive order and birthright citizenship.
Yeah.
We've got court rulings, legal analysis, reactions from the CIA, you name it.
A lot to cover.
It's a big deal. Now, most people know the basics. Born in the U.S., you're a citizen thanks to the 14th Amendment, right?
Right.
Well, this executive order tries to change that, and we're going to unpack why.
It really comes down to one phrase: subject to the jurisdiction thereof in that amendment.
Okay.
The Trump administration's arguing that it's been misinterpreted for, over a century. They're saying it doesn't apply to kids of undocumented immigrants.
Hold on, so they're saying everyone's got it wrong all this time, and they're right.
That's their argument.
That's a big claim. What's the logic behind that?
Well, the Department of Justice, they say, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, meant to exclude people owing allegiance to another country. They're saying the folks who wrote the 14th Amendment never meant to give automatic citizenship to babies born to people who weren't here legally.
But I mean, birthright citizenship, that's how it's always been understood, right? For, forever.
Right.
What are the courts saying about this?
Well, several federal judges have been like, whoa, this is probably unconstitutional. Some even saying blatantly unconstitutional.
Yeah.
They've put a stop to it for now. One judge even asked, where were the lawyers on this one? Basically saying it doesn't seem very legally sound.
Sounds like a pretty strong message from the judges. But the administration's pushing back, right? Saying this whole thing encourages illegal immigration.
Exactly. They're saying birthright citizenship attracts undocumented immigrants to have kids here, kids who would automatically be citizens.
Yeah.
Putting a strain on resources, they say, and going against the rule of law. This argument's been around for a while, though.
Right. So we've got these different interpretations clashing, legal battles, strong opinions on all sides. But let's think about the actual people affected by this order, not just the legal stuff.
Right.
Who are we talking about here?
Think about Monica, a doctor from Venezuela. She's here with temporary protected status.
Okay.
She's pregnant, and with this executive order, her baby might not be an American citizen.
Oh, wow.
It's a real fear for her, the thought of her child being stateless.
That's just one story, right? There must be so many families dealing with this uncertainty, not knowing what's next for them and their kids.
Absolutely.
It's not just a theoretical debate. It's about real lives and belonging. This isn't the only thing shaking things up, though. This executive order seems like part of a bigger plan to change the government, and now Elon Musk is in the mix.
Yeah, President Trump brought him in to lead this streamlining effort.
Okay.
But critics, groups like the AFL-CIO, they're calling it a huge attack on federal workers.
So Musk went from electric cars in space to, overhauling the government. What's the plan here, and what does it mean?
The administration claims it's about efficiency and saving money, but the methods and the scale of it are raising concerns, like the CIA being told to give the White House a list of their new hires.
Wait, the CIA sharing personnel info, what are the security risks there? How does that fit into this efficiency idea?
Yeah, even though the names were blacked out, a former CIA officer called it a potential counterintelligence disaster. Shows you the risk of sharing that kind of data during a major shakeup.
It makes you wonder if they're thinking enough about national security.
Definitely.
So we've got a potential security issue with the CIA, and Musk's team also has access to the Bureau of the Fiscal Service. The system that handles basically all government payments. That seems like a lot of power in one place.
Yeah.
What are the worries about this kind of access?
Well, think about it. They can see Social Security numbers, bank account details. It's a huge amount of sensitive data.
Right.
Critics say this raises major privacy concerns and worries about misuse, especially since Musk's businesses are involved with the government and could benefit from this data.
That's a valid point. It's unsettling. And a career Treasury official even resigned because of it. Clearly, people are uneasy. And this whole government restructuring is happening while we've got a debt ceiling crisis looming, trade tensions, and all sorts of global issues.
Right.
How do these things all connect?
It's complicated. They're all intertwined. This push to cut spending while we're facing a debt ceiling crisis is, well, a recipe for economic trouble. Then you add potential global fallout from trade wars and strained alliances, and things get really tricky.
A lot to unpack here. We've got a fight over the meaning of citizenship, a government undergoing a major transformation, and global events adding to the complexity. Before we move on, what stood out to you the most so far?
I think it's how these seemingly separate things are converging. Redefining citizenship, restructuring the government, and this volatile global landscape. It suggests a pretty big shift in how America sees itself, both internally and on the world stage.
Let's dig into some of these pieces. Let's start with the legal arguments around birthright citizenship.
Okay.
What are the key precedents and historical arguments they're using to support their interpretations of the 14th Amendment?
To understand that, we need to go back to the time after the Civil War and the original intent of the 14th Amendment. So let's get back to Elon Musk and his part in changing the U.S. government.
Yeah, it's a big jump for him. From electric cars and space to, well, this Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, they're calling it. But it's not even a real government agency, is it?
No, it's not. It operates directly under President Trump, which is people concerned about accountability.
I can see why.
And he has this broad power to find waste, streamline things, cut the federal workforce. It's causing a lot of debate.
We talked about the CIA giving up that list of new hires and the security risks there.
Right.
What about other agencies? Are people worried these cuts might hurt important government services?
Definitely. The AFL-CIO is saying it's the biggest assault on federal workers ever. That shows how much anxiety there is about job losses.
Yeah.
Critics are saying vital services could be on the chopping block if the cuts are too deep.
And this is all happening with the debt ceiling crisis hanging over our heads. We mentioned the Treasury taking those extraordinary measures.
Right.
Could you break down what those actually are and how does this government overhaul affect them?
Sure. Extraordinary measures are basically accounting tricks, allowing the Treasury to keep paying the bills even when we hit the debt limit.
Okay.
But they're temporary. If the debt ceiling isn't raised, the government could default on its debts. That would be economic chaos. Trying to restructure everything while juggling these measures, it just adds more risk to an already risky situation.
Let's talk about Musk's team having access to the Bureau of the Fiscal Service. What exactly does this bureau do, and why is this access such a big red flag?
The Bureau of the Fiscal Service, it's basically the central payment system for the entire U.S. government. Social Security checks, tax refunds, federal salaries, it all goes through them.
Wow, so everything.
The worry is that Musk's team can now see all this sensitive data, Social Security numbers, bank info, everything.
That's not very comforting.
Not at all.
What are the arguments for and against giving this much access to an outside group, especially one led by someone like Musk with all his business ties?
Well, the administration says Musk's team only has read-only access.
Okay.
And that it's necessary to find those inefficiencies and streamline things.
Mm-hmm.
But critics say even read-only access is dangerous with data this sensitive. They don't think the safeguards against misuse are strong enough, especially since Musk's companies work with the government and could profit from this info.
Right. So you've got potential conflicts of interest, privacy concerns, and a lack of clear oversight. What are legal experts saying about whether this is even legal?
There are already lawsuits. Some argue that this level of access breaks privacy laws and goes beyond what DOGE is allowed to do.
Makes sense.
Others are pointing out the lack of transparency, that there wasn't really a public discussion before this happened.
This whole thing is very complicated, and the implications could be huge. Putting aside the legal and ethical stuff for a second, what could the long-term consequences be, both for the government and for everyday people?
Well, long-term, people are worried about the misuse of this sensitive data and the public losing trust in the government.
Yeah?
There's also the fear that essential services will be weakened if the cuts are too drastic. And it raises a bigger question about who has the power to shape government policy, elected officials, or private individuals.
Even if we assume everyone has good intentions, giving so much power to one person, especially someone outside the government, it makes you question our democratic processes.
Absolutely. There's this worry about setting a precedent for future administrations. If this becomes the norm, what's stopping future leaders from giving huge control to private entities who have their own agendas?
That's a scary thought. So we're left with a lot of questions and potential dangers. What do you think is going to happen? What should people be watching for as this situation unfolds?
I think it's important to pay attention to the lawsuits, how transparent the administration is, and what they're doing to protect our information.
Yeah.
We also need to be aware of how these changes are affecting government services and our democratic institutions as a whole.
Well, we've covered a ton in this deep dive, from birthright citizenship to the government shakeup and Musk's role in all of it. It seems like it all points to a bigger question, about what it means to be American in 2025.
Yeah, it really does. It's about American identity, the values that define us, who's included, and how these changes reflect America's place in the world.
Let's start with birthright citizenship. The administration challenging this, it makes you think about who's considered American and who isn't.
For over 100 years, birthright citizenship has been this bedrock of American identity. The idea that anyone born here is a citizen, no matter their parents' status. This challenge, it suggests a narrower view of belonging.
And then there's the whole government restructuring with Elon Musk leading the charge. His idea of a leaner government, it might sound good, but there's that worry about too much power in one place and potential conflicts of interest.
It's definitely unconventional. Giving this much control to one person outside the government, it raises questions about our democratic processes and accountability. How do we ensure transparency, prevent abuse of power with this much authority given to one individual?
And let's not forget what's happening globally. We're seeing nationalism on the rise, shifting alliances, tensions escalating worldwide. How does America's internal struggle with identity and power fit into all of this?
The world's watching America's moves closely. The current administration's policies, from trade wars to questioning old alliances, suggest a move away from global cooperation and towards a more go-it-alone approach. This could create more instability in an already unstable world.
So much to think about. What do you think the long-term consequences of all this could be for both American society and its place in the world?
It's hard to say for sure, but these trends could be a turning point for America. We might be seeing a shift away from values like inclusivity, global cooperation, democratic norms, things long associated with American identity.
That's a bit unsettling, but we have to remember the future isn't set in stone. Our choices, our actions, the conversations we have, they all shape what's to come.
Definitely. It's more important than ever to engage in these discussions, question what we think we know, and hold our leaders accountable.
So, to everyone listening, as we wrap up, we want to leave you with some questions to consider. What does it mean to be American in these uncertain times? What values do you think should define our nation? And what can you do to shape a future that reflects those values?
These are complex questions, constantly evolving, and we encourage you to keep exploring them. Engage with the issues you care about.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's given you some insights to help you navigate these complicated times. Staying informed and involved, that's key to creating the future we want.